The Los Angeles Rams traded for future Hall of Fame pass rusher yesterday in Von Miller, and that brings up a very valid and very relevant question. But are the Rams either insane or smarter than the rest of the NFL? With this trade, trading a second and third round pick in the upcoming 2022 NFL Draft, their first selection is now in the 5th round because their 2022 first went to the Lions to acquire Matt Stafford, and their 4th round selection was involved in a Brandon Cooks trade going to the Texans. Now, I personally did not know this before making this video, or forgot because there's been so many trades over the past couple of years, so to quickly explain, Brandon Cooks and a 2022 4th were used to trade for a 2020 second-round pick, which the Rams eventually used on Van Jefferson, who is now in his second year from the University of Florida. So now the question and breakdown of everything, and this dates back a little bit, so it is more complicated than a simple yes or no answer, but are the Los Angeles Rams smarter than the rest of the NFL or flat out insane? So without further ado, let's begin. When dissecting this and breaking this down, it starts with the man who is the head coach of the Los Angeles Rams, which is, of course, Sean McVay. McVay has been described as boy wonder and a guy who is not afraid to step out on a limb far and away by himself to do this or do that, and this is yet another example of doing so, trading for Von Miller, that is. Their last first-round pick came back in 2016 with Jared Goff, and while Goff did lead the Rams to a Super Bowl appearance, that team was loaded and it was not strictly due to the play of Goff, and everyone knows that. And I've said this several times over the past few weeks, but Goff is winless without McVay as his head coach, and that to me at least signifies the Rams drafted an underwhelming quarterback at number 1 overall. Not to say he's a complete bust, because Goff is a lot better than the all-time busts like Russell and Leaf, but underwhelming if you can't win a game without Sean McVay. Now, the Rams have hit on players like Cooper Kupp in the later rounds of the draft, but have swung and missed on players relative to where they have been drafted, like tight end Gerald Everett. Everett was a second-round pick back in 2017 and was selected before Kupp was, and while Jared isn't a bad player, he certainly was not the second-round pick Sean McVay envisioned when the franchise made the selection. And obviously all picks can't be hits, but we will credit the Rams for having a pretty successful all-in-all 2017 draft class. I'm not going through every player here, but believe it or not, if you can get 1.5 to 2 starters per class, then it is a pretty successful draft class, and they have 5 players who have played in 60 plus NFL games, and the chances of that happening are pretty low. Obviously, aside from Kupp, who we assume is peaking right now as this video is being made in late 2021, but none of these guys are league-changing Aaron Donald type players, and that's actually a really lofty expectation for anyone, but what I'm saying is that is completely fine. The 2018 draft class they had was really not good, and there's really no way to spin this into saying they had this or that player. John Franklin Myers is arguably the best player from this class, and he is now tearing it up for the New York Jets. Now, Rams fans, you guys know you could argue center Brian Allen has been good, and really great for that matter, but is Brian Allen alone worth an entire draft class? And second defensive tackle Sebastian Joseph has had a good career for what he is supposed to be, given he was a late 6th round pick, but again, I don't think Allen and Joseph are an entire draft class worth of picks in being Aaron Donald's wingman. And my point of emphasis here is the Rams trade their top picks away for a reason. Sean McVay values veterans over the potential of a player. He values getting for sure production and what has been for sure production in whoever he is acquiring rather than developing the next, whether it is a player like Trevor Lawrence or even a 4th round center in Brian Allen. Of course, the Rams hit on some picks here and there. Every NFL team does, and I promise you that. There's 53 players on every NFL roster, and at some point, someone was a later round pick that succeeded. But, to be completely honest, I don't think the Rams are entirely comfortable making first-round picks, and combined with McVay's both aggressive and innovative mindset, it is perfectly okay for them to not make first-round picks and be fine in the long run. And while we are on this, everyone always conveniently points out and says, oh well, the Rams will for sure fall off, and they're going to pay for this. But we're half a decade into these types of moves they've been making, whether it was Sammy Watkins back in 2017, whether it was for Marcus Peters back in 2018, whether it was for Aqib Talib back in 2018, or Brandon Cooks, or Dante Fowler Jr., or Jalen Ramsey, or Matt Stafford, to push for a Super Bowl run. They've made over half a dozen trades to acquire some of the biggest names in football, and it is all to get the ring. But one thing for sure regarding McVay and the Rams is they're going to be good, and they're especially going to be good for a while now that they have Matt Stafford. Perhaps McVay's biggest accomplishment to date, we say to date because we assume and hope that he will get a ring at some point, is going 3-3 with Jared Goff as his quarterback in the playoffs. Going 3-3 with a guy who is 0-14 when he is not his head coach is an insane stat, and McVay managed to go 500 with him with the season on the line. The Rams went into Seattle last year in January and beat the Russell Wilson-led Seahawks with Jared Goff. Whether you stand on the side of the Rams are going to eventually be bad and they will pay for this at one point or another, the take doesn't work that you'll be right eventually, and here's why. What I'm saying is if the Rams eventually go 4-13 or 5-12, whether that's in 2026 or 2027, you can't then sit there and claim you are right after they had a decade of success doing this and going about it their way. Now that McVay has his quarterback in Stafford, we've seen how dominant they can be and why they were willing to give up 2 first-round picks plus their previous starting quarterback to go get their guy. Stafford is only 33, so there's not a concern he'll retire in the next year or two, and it is possible McVay and Stafford are a quarterback-head coach duo for the next 7+ years, and based on what we've seen so far, they will more than be good for the course of time. Now, this can easily be clipped and taken way out of context, but think Brady Belichick with Stafford and McVay, and pausing for a second, because I obviously don't think they're going to win 6 titles together, but the two are a terrific pair, and will do anything to win, and we know that. And football is the ultimate team game, and the Rams do have some very good players on their roster, which of course is an understatement. But as long as Stafford has McVay, the Rams will be fine. Matt had some of the worst coaches a quarterback can have and still had multiple Pro Bowls and was the face of an entire city. Now, me going on this tangent about both Stafford and McVay is relative to the video because it brings us back to the point in question of are they insane or is all of this trading for picks justified? And I do think it's justified because of the hits and misses this team has had in the past of drafts, and really other teams for that matter too, but more specifically here's the Rams. Would 2 players the Rams have selected equated to Jalen Ramsey? By the way, the players selected with those picks that they traded to the Jags were K'Lavon Chaisson and Travis Etienne, so you tell me who you'd rather have. Now, every team has misses, don't get me wrong, but I would be highly surprised if they didn't already have a long-term contract planned out for Von before the wheels of the plane he flew from Denver even touched down in LA. And by the way, if you're thinking salary cap, the salary cap in a sense is a little bit of a myth because you can work and finagle your way around a lot of other things. Think of how the Vikings have not had to let anybody go due to having Kirk Cousins and that dreaded contract. They really haven't had to let anybody go. And while the Rams are never, and this is because they trade a lot, not because I think Les Snead is a bad general manager, but the Rams will probably never have an all-time draft in this era that single-handedly builds a dynasty. They have drafted well enough to have players that are key contributors and keep them afloat. We all know the big guns they have, but 4 or 5 big guns don't make an entire team, and Stafford, Donald, Ramsey, and now Von need everyone else to contribute, and they are a 7-1 football team, so there's no reason to suggest LA won't finish with a 13+ win regular season. One more point I wanted to highlight within all of this is while the Rams have traded for big name players, they haven't been burned huge on the point of return. And what I mean is think Texans Cardinals DeAndre Hopkins trade. Yes, we all know that shouldn't have happened, but the 2nd round pick was defensive tackle Ross Blacklock. And when you essentially trade Ross Blacklock for DeAndre Hopkins, well, to put it simply and short, there's a reason they're the Texans. But the Rams made the Brandon Cooks trade with the Patriots, the original one, not the one to get him off of the team. but they made it with the Patriots, and that was used on a first-round pick. The Patriots spent that on Isaiah Wynn, a tackle who has been injured for the most part of his career. And we do not know what players the Lions will select with their upcoming draft picks in 2022 and 23, but we do expect both of those first-round picks to be in the 26 to 32 range. At this point, I would be extremely surprised if the Rams aren't in at least the NFC Championship game this year, but there is going to be serious competition from teams like the Cardinals, who already beat them by 17 points, the Bucs, the Packers, and of course the Dallas Cowboys. Adding a pass rusher like Von Miller and a future Hall of Famer in Von Miller will certainly propel the Rams towards a Super Bowl title, and I cannot wait to see how it all plays out. Now, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, as it would mean the world. And with the recent news of Henry Ruggs, please stay safe, tell your people you love them, and by the way, holler at me if you see me at the Vikings-Ravens games this Sunday. Until next time, love you guys, and have a good day.